This is AgGrad Live.
We have all of the different segments within the cotton.
The show that explores what it's really like to work in the ag industry.
So making sure that we get policy and regulatory issues
straight from the people who live it every day. We are live, AgGrad Nation. Thank you so much for tuning in. Another episode of AgGrad Live, where we get to bring on successful, ambitious, talented people onto the show to share their best career advice and experiences with you. And we have a widely recognized brand for you here today. You've probably seen our guest or heard her at least on their podcast. We have on the show Lexi Marek, and Lexi is the communications manager at FarmHer. Lexi, you are on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Cool. Well, my goal is going to be by the end of this broadcast, you're going to want to record your podcast live on Facebook.
Okay, I'm actually glad you brought that up because I wanted to see how it goes, and then I'll see if we can handle that. But okay. I'm super intrigued, and I have always thought AgGrad is a step ahead of everyone else. So, yes, honestly, your goal might be very quickly achieved.
Well, I had Marji on the other podcast, The Future of Agriculture, maybe a year or so ago, and just picked her brain because it seems like FarmHer's path has been in some ways similar to AgGrad's. In like early days, you're sort of figuring yourself out, and we know kind of our space, but we don't know exactly where we fit. And it takes time, and I'm excited to talk to you about that more. But maybe for starters, when did you first hear about FarmHer? And for those who might be tuning in who I doubt this is possible, but maybe if they're in ag and they hadn't heard about FarmHer, give them an idea of kind of what the brand is all about.
Yeah, FarmHer is all about shining a light on women in agriculture. So we do something a little different than most companies in agriculture, and that is focusing on a gender that is not always seen. It started with images. And like you said, Marji is my boss. She's the founder of FarmHer, and she's a photographer. So she simply just started taking pictures because her background is in graphic design. And when she worked in corporate agriculture for 11 years, and that was her extent of that career, she didn't use a lot of pictures of women, and because they weren't available. So as she started creating her own images and she started sharing those with people kind of took notice. And they started to think it was really interesting. So that came in the social media, the website, all the images. And we now have thousands and thousands of beautiful images of families and stories of people on their farm. From the images, she started doing speaking events because she knew she needed to get the brand out there. That's how I met FarmHer. So I was working, I grew up on my family's 6th generation farm, Southeast Iowa. I have a livestock and row crop operation in my blood. And I was working actually at the National Pork Board, which is right down the street from where I'm at right now, and doing an internship there. And I was driving back to Ames from working there a day, and I loved it. I did the Real Pig Farming brand, and just had called my mom and told her for summer internships, I didn't know what I wanted to do or where I wanted to be. I had just switched my major. And I was going to this event that night for the entrepreneurship program, but I was going to go home for the summer and work on the farm. And my mom said, okay, your bed's open, do whatever you want because you're going to anyway. And so I knew I had that option to come home, and I had pretty much made up my mind. And then about a half an hour later, I had heard Marji say she was taking pictures of agriculture. She was putting them out there on the web and wanted to continue to grow this brand. And by that point, she had started her line of merchandise. And I said, ag, photos, websites, social media, clothes, like that just screams my interest. So I told her that night that I wanted to be her intern, and she hadn't thought about an intern before. She knew she was really busy. And I ended up interviewing, going through the process through our entrepreneurship program there at Iowa State, and was hired as FarmHer's first employee. So I had a really, really quick start into the company, and it's grown so much since then.
So I know from starting a business myself, like that first employee, first intern, but even first full-time employee is a huge step. And for her to take a chance on you kind of being right out of college, what do you think it was about your internship experience that gave her such a good impression. And I know it's kind of awkward to brag on yourself like this a little bit, but just all right, we'll get over that part. You're going to have to brag on yourself a little bit by the nature of the question. But what do you think it was about you that made her say, I really need to bring Lexi on full time?
Okay, this is uncomfortable, but thank you for pushing me to say this. So I feel like what I've been able to bring to FarmHer is a complete balance to what Marji Marji did with FarmHer. So she was kind of burnout and wasn't really into the social media, email lists, campaign marketing. She had started all of that, but that's where my interest really and my passion, what kind of like gets me excited, is watching those numbers rise and seeing our interactions and engagement. So right from the get-go, I was able to just, double that and triple. And since then, we've just kept growing. And I've been doing that for 3.5 years now. So I created that opportunity and that spot for me to really take over and to make better. And then she could focus on something else. Something else that I did as an intern, which is I look back and think, what the heck were we both thinking? Because as an intern, that was bold for me to start an event. And then it was also really risky for her to say, go for it. And the background story behind this is I'm the oldest of 4 girls. So I have 3 sisters, and in college that was paid a lot by scholarships. So I had applied for the Iowa 4-H scholarship. I've always been involved in leadership activities and had good grades and all this stuff, so I could keep going to school. And I applied for the Iowa 4-H scholarship, and their biggest scholarship gave you a challenge, and it was pretty much to change the world. And I didn't know what to do with that, but I had done something in college, and I organized a hunger fight. And that was when students packaged meals and we sent them across the country and across the world with a different organization. So I was like, all right, I'm going to fill this out. I'm going to be like, I can do this scholarship. I know what I'm talking about because it's already done. Yeah, that's not the rules. The rule was to think in the future of what you can do. So I quickly had to redo this application. Didn't tell Marji, but when I put myself into my shoes, I thought, what could help me? And what I thought was to connect with professionals as a student and then have the opportunity to talk and meet and really build like a mentorship and a network. And I did it for women in agriculture because I was working for FarmHer that summer. So I went through this interview, must have sounded halfway convincing because I got the scholarship. And then my first day of the internship, I said, well, Marji, I kind of need to do this event. And the goal was 30 people total, just over lunch. Let's just have a lunch together. And she said, this is where it becomes bold. She said, okay, you just can't lose money.
Well, so, I want to make sure I'm getting this right though. So you committed FarmHer to doing an event before you even had the internship?
Well, I committed. I had the internship. I had accepted, but I hadn't started full time that summer.
All right.
Yeah. And I committed myself to doing this event, but it was just a natural fit for FarmHer. Gotcha. So I guess if Marji wouldn't have said yes, I probably could have pulled it off anyway. Yeah. But it turned into my summer internship. And since then, so my goal of 30 people, we've hit almost 1,500 people. And have had 11 different events in 9 different states. Wow. So what I learned was that it was not just important to me. People not only in the state of Iowa thought it was of value to either invest in or attend, and people across the country thought it was of value to invest in and attend. And that was kind of how I created a full-time position here at FarmHer, because not only the excitement with the attendees, but the sponsors, and that grew our ability to connect with companies. And then out of that came the TV show, and out of that came the radio show. Wow.
That's amazing. And I think that's going to be a big theme probably as in this whole episode here, which is, I don't really like it because it sounds cliche to say, follow your passion and things will work out, because I don't really believe that necessarily. But what I do believe, and I think what you're great evidence of, is just because you don't know how something is going to turn out is not reason not to go after it. If there are other compelling reasons to go after something, not knowing how it's necessarily going to turn out is not a deal breaker. And I think that could definitely be said of you, because I imagine, so FarmHer is a new company. Are you probably less than 5 years old now? Is that right?
We just hit 5 years this spring.
Okay,
So
just
right
hit
at
5 years.
5 years. Yep.
So when you started in college, it didn't exist yet.
No. Yeah.
And so what track were you on, and like, how did you know that this kind of like new concept was going to be right for you?
So very funny you bring this up, because like I said, I have 3 younger sisters. They're all incredible. 2 will go into agriculture. 1 is going into fashion. My youngest sister right now is 16, and she was a sophomore in high school. And that's the time where you start thinking about college. So this is a hot topic. And she is very much a planner. She is a go-getter. And she was really struggling with, Lexi, I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. I don't know what I want to do when I grow up. And I look back, and I still have my, applications or things I had written in high school. And I set myself up for success, like without even meaning to, but it was the smartest thing I could have done. And I said every single application, I don't exactly know my career path, but I know I want to stay in agriculture. I want to work with people, and I want to connect, my passion with others. I'm like, dude, I could have done anything and nailed that goal. Like, that was brilliant. So that's what I tell her. Like, if you don't know what you want to do, you want to be an ag, and that's something. And that's a goal. Even if you don't want to be an ag, you can still set goals and go from there. But that was my only goal, is I wanted to work with people. I wanted to stay in agriculture. And then, okay, where was I going with that? Oh, not knowing what I want to do. I actually tell her that every day, is you don't even know what companies are going to be out there in 3 years, let alone 5 years. And if I would have been so focused on narrowing myself down when I graduated high school, I might not have been too open-minded to push a small town or a small startup company to offer an internship. And then my life would be completely different.
Yeah, I think, the unknown is scary for everybody. I think it, biologically, I think we're wired to be worried about the unknown, but I really think that's very good advice. Start with what you do know. Okay, I'm passionate about this, that, and the other, and allow yourself the flexibility for it to take different forms. Agriculture and people and that's kind of my passions too, and that could have obviously gone in a lot of different ways, but I think allowing it to is very important. And what a lot of people, they stress about, I think they think, okay, well, ag tech is the future, so I have to go get a degree in engineering. That's a great path if you're passionate about, engineering and you like that stuff and it's for you, perfect. But don't feel like that's the only way you can be successful, because that's where you think the trends are going. You really have to start with what you know. What advice? So I think that's a really good starting point. And actually, we have a comment here. I'm going to bring up this comment. It's from Corey Ingram. Corey says, "Lexi, you're a dynamite champion of ag. Can't wait to see what all you'll do and grow." So Corey, thanks for being on the live broadcast. And if any of you have a question or comment, feel free to leave it in the comments below, and we'll be happy to share it with everybody else who's watching now and who will watch once this broadcast is over. So thanks, Corey, for your being on here and your comment. But I'm curious, Lexi, what other advice would you give somebody who's maybe saying, yeah, that's great to know if you know what your passion is. Let's say I just have a passion for working in a grain elevator. Like that's my passion. How many people could say that? Probably not very many. Most people would say, I don't know what my passion is. What advice or direction could you give those people?
So finding your passion is maybe the hardest thing you could ever do. And I don't even know I'm passionate about different things at different times. And sometimes if I hit a bump in the road, I'm like, I'm done. I don't like this anymore. Yeah, I'm done. Too hard. Yeah. So a lot of times on my family raises livestock, and we raise show pigs, for example. And I've been talking a lot about this and realizing this as I work with our customers and even with my family. I mentioned I have one sister in fashion. Well, she's not super passionate about the pigs. She was successful, winning wise. She was very successful. But when we talk about success, the only person that defines that is you. And I'm really about that, for especially defining your passion. Is if you are wanting to work in a grain elevator, you define your success. So do it. And if I want to, like my customers, if you want to win the county fair, then let's figure out a way for you to be successful at that goal. If you want to win the state fair, we can do it. It takes a different level of hard work and commitment, and you need to know what that end goal is so you can get there. And an end goal doesn't have to be, when I am 60 plus years old, where am I going to retire? It could be the end of the summer, what I want to either have taken away or have, brought home or have gained. And it can be from winning the pig show to not winning, but you're not going to win every pig show, but could be taking away memories with your families or meeting friends or learning lessons or anything like that. But I'm really about like, before you get to passion, you got to get to what your success is going to be.
Right. No, I agree. I think that, and that could be a hard thing for a lot of people is getting clarity on that. Cause like, okay, well, I know of 10 career options in my community and none of them sound that exciting for me. But I think another thing people can do is kind of find, maybe you don't know what profession you want to be in, but find a problem that is solvable or a problem that needs attention. Maybe it's a community problem. Agriculture, I always say, exists to solve problems, food, shelter, clothing, etc. So if you can find a problem you're passionate about, you don't necessarily need to find a career you're passionate about, but I think it definitely could lead that way if you start there. All right. So right. I don't know if this is a comment or just doing her intern duty for the day, but we have Hannah Borg, who is the FarmHer intern, says, Lexi is my favorite. What is one piece of advice that you have gotten that you wish you would have listened to better? And yeah, this is a really good question. Hannah might even have asked this earlier on in another broadcast, because I think it's a really, really good question. So for you, a career advice that you got earlier in your career or even before your career started that you're looking back on now and saying, you know what, that was really good advice. I wish I would have listened to it more effectively.
Yeah, that's funny because Hannah did ask it to Marlene, and I remember seeing this.
Yeah, that's right. Yep.
And Marlene, I think she stumped her, and I was like, "Oh, that's a good question." And now she's thrown it at me. So I actually had time to think about this because I kind of had a feeling it was coming. But the one thing, obviously, I've been at FarmHer for 3.5 years, but I have only been full time for just over a year. So I would consider myself still very new in my career. And, we even talked about that. I said, like, I'd love to share advice if I could, but I feel like I'm not a veteran. I'm not.
Yeah, you were trying to bow out respectfully by saying like, oh, I'm too young to give anybody advice. And I appreciate that. Also very humble, but you're working for, what's growing to be a very iconic brand in ag. So I'm glad you're here. But anyway.
Thank you. Yeah. And I have learned a lot. I'm saying what I'm saying is I still have a lot to learn. But the one piece of advice when I think about this, I just mentioned showing pigs. And I remember my dad saying, focus on yourself, focus on what you want to do. And because when you're in a pig barn, people would talk. And if you do good or bad, or I always felt like there was a little comment, and as many good comments as you get, that one little negative comment is going to jab into your side forever and ever. And I think I was a pig girl. And I think I won the heifer show at the county fair. And I worked hard on my heifers. My sisters and I got them in the cooler every morning. And then we raised them and had babies and kept this heifer project going. But I wasn't considered a cow girl. I was a pig girl. And someone said something about that. And I just remember my dad saying, like, enough. You're done. Don't focus on that. Why is what one person is saying affecting you? And learning that in 8th grade has continued, because when you go to a small town or a small company, people are going to question you. Well, should you be going for a startup company? Focusing on women in agriculture. That was kind of a hot topic 4 years ago, and it was a new topic, and people were a little uncomfortable with the topic. So there was a lot of questioning going on, whether it be the kids in my school, bringing up women in agriculture versus men in agriculture and who's better. And ultimately, it doesn't matter. It's just what I'm focusing on. I'm not tearing down anyone. And that will continue. Everyone will always have an opinion. And the back to, going to a startup company, people will comment on you going to a corporate company. Everyone's going to have an opinion. So I've learned, and I wish I would have learned it more, and I'm still having to remind myself, is just focus on what you want to do and focus on you and block opinions out, because they will always be there and they will never go away.
That's great. And I know, especially in being a startup company, focus is so important because you don't know who you are yet in some ways. And so you're like, oh, just think we could do everything. And, we could be all things to all people. And obviously when you go to do that in real life, you can't. And so learning that focus and learning, I found that the 2 times in my life where I got the most unsolicited advice is when my wife and I had our first child and when I started a business. Like, everybody knew, whether they'd ever had a child or a business or not, they just knew what I needed to do. And so maintaining that focus can be really, really, really tough because.
And it's so overwhelming.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
For sure. Definitely. Well, there's something you said that made me think of it. It's a little bit of a change in gears here, but so you graduated a year and a half ago or something?
Yeah. Yep. Okay. May 2017.
Okay. So you probably had some friends that did decide to go more of the large corporate route. And I'm sure you've had conversations in the past year about this. What have you noticed to be the big differences between your work environment or role and theirs, for those that might be debating whether a small company or a large company might be right for them?
I can wear sweatpants to work. and that can happen at multiple different companies. But honestly, the culture at my small company makes me love it. I know my team members very well. We travel a lot together. And I've never worked at a corporate company, and I think there's some benefits there as well. But for my small company, there's days where I don't see anyone. I walk into the office, I sit in my office, and then I go home at night. So, dress code, the busyness here at the office, it's not there like it would be at a bigger job. Some other things, I think no matter what, and a lot of my friends and I have figured this out from the about year and few months that we've been in the job force. And some of my friends have changed jobs. And really what it comes down to is the culture of the company, and whether you have a good vision, whether or not you like exactly in your job what you're doing every day. The people around you make the big difference. So what fills my cup up is knowing I have a team that's got my back and we're working towards a good goal. And then I also have the unique ability, and I feel so fortunate to be able to travel the country with this brand and this business and then meet amazing people from across the country. And, I just talked to 2 ladies in Maryland who turned their generational family farm into a winery and event venue. And knowing that and getting to do that, I feel fortunate. In my small company, I have my hands in a whole bunch of different things, and I can work with lots of people. Very
cool. We do have a couple other comments here. First, we have a question from Clayton, and I could take it first since I've already had a chance to look at it and think about it here. This is a big question. Clayton Goodwin is asking, how far do you see IT, data science, and automation becoming more incorporated into ag? And Clayton, actually, I've got a really good chance to think about this a lot lately because on the other podcast we do called Future of Agriculture, this is what we talk about. So it's all about ag tech, ag entrepreneurship, sustainability, and food security. We just had on Michael Gilbert from Semios, and what they do is they have an Internet of Things connected device orchard program. So they put sensors up. I think he said they have like 500,000 sensors now throughout the Western United States. They collect data on everything from pest traps to frost to soil moisture to leaf wetness, et cetera. Anyway, they aggregate all this data and they help farmers make decisions and be proactive when managing things like that. I think we're just scratching the surface with stuff like that. There are a few companies also doing that in row crops, or doing similar work, I should say, in row crops. I think the combination of a really a really tech savvy farmer and technology like that is definitely a big part of the future of agriculture. And I think we're just starting there. And Lexi, if you have thoughts on that, feel free to dive in as well.
Yeah, it's not going away. In fact, it's just getting bigger and bigger and better and better. And I'm excited to see where it goes. I don't want to lose this grit that we have on the farm. And I don't think we ever will, because technology is made to make things better. And I'm excited we have all the data at our fingertips that we could ever imagine, but how to use that data, I think it'll keep growing and keep getting better.
Yep. And I think it's going to be a combination between the farmer who's already extremely skilled at monitoring, obviously in growing crops and livestock and poultry. A combination of that plus the tools is definitely going to be a big part of the future. And I used the crops example, but definitely there's plenty of data monitoring in livestock and poultry as well. Got Patrick on here as well with a comment: network. It is not necessarily what you know and your passion, but who you know. The more people in the agriculture community who know you increases your opportunities. Agree or disagree, Lexi?
Patrick, you're speaking my language. I cannot agree more. Those who know me, I just want to be friends with everyone. So if you're listening, connect with me. But I definitely do. I'm a people person, and that network I don't think can get big enough.
Very cool. I agree too. In fact, I am getting ready this week to go to Georgia for the Georgia Young Farmers and Ranchers conference. I get to speak there on Saturday. So if any of you are watching, going to be down there, I look forward to meeting you as well. Lexi, just before we wrap up here, real quick, what excites you about FarmHer? I mean, you all have done so much in the short time you've been in business, from a TV show on RFD TV to these live events, to the podcast, the t-shirts. I know you're out at a lot of these industry events. As you think about the future of FarmHer, what gets you most excited?
So I guess I could tell a little secret here of a goal that we are working on, and this is only to AgGrad Nation. First time anyone's really heard it, but as we work to strengthen our events, travel the country, build our network, meet more people, I do want to offer more ways to connect with people where they're at. And that's been kind of the goal and the theme for 2018 as I lead kind of the digital media, all the strategy from that aspect. And I think a webinar series is definitely coming soon. And that way we can connect with our people where they're at in rural America and continue to have conversations, as well as offer educational resources and things that we've learned, and bring in professionals who want to connect with those people as well.
Awesome. Well, you heard it here first, folks. Exclusive announcement of the FarmHer webinar series. I love webinars. I just really enjoy the interaction, and I get a lot of value from attending. And I think that's a fantastic idea. If people want to follow up with you, they can probably find FarmHer pretty much everywhere. Just Google FarmHer, and you'll see all of Lexi and Marji's work. But how can they follow what you're doing, Lexi?
Yeah. So if you look on the FarmHer website, you might see me modeling a t-shirt or hosting a podcast. I do get to be in a lot of different aspects, but personally, my Instagram, Facebook, Twitter handle is @Lexi Marek. And then my website is lexi-marek.com. And I would love to connect. I would say, and I have Snapchat too, Lexi Marek. I'm pretty simple, but I'd love to connect with anyone and continue conversations past what we're having right now.
Cool. Well, make sure you follow up with her. Lexi, if you wouldn't mind, after we're done, maybe in the comments, type in your website, because I got your Instagram and Twitter and Snapchat handle up there. But maybe add that so people can follow along with what you're up to. Thank you so much for doing this. Really appreciate this. For those of you tuning in live, thank you. If you didn't get a chance to tune in live and you want to, or if you want to catch some other episodes, this is also on YouTube as well as a podcast. So just look up AgGrad on YouTube or AgGrad Live on your favorite podcast player, and you will be able to see Lexi's episode and others. So I really appreciate you taking the time. I'm glad this worked out, Lexi. Thank you.
Yes, it was so great to connect. This has been an awesome time.
Cool. Well, I'm going to sign off here. We'll see you all next week.
Thank you for joining AgGrad Live. Visit aggrad.com, that's AGGRAD, to join the community, create your profile, and learn more about careers in the agriculture industry.